Gonna do it.
I know Democrats every day they wake up and thank God and relive January 6th like it's Groundhog Day.
So it wasn't a big deal?
I put it this way.
It wasn't a threat to our democracy?
There was more damage, more destruction, more deaths, and more police officers injured in the BLM riots, and nobody went to jail.
There was a very spicy moment on CNN tonight that I wanted to bring to you because that guy that she was just yelling at is a MAGA Republican. I don't know why CNN is putting them on the air. I'm actually a little conflicted about it. Like, is it good that a MAGA Republican is on the air? Probably not. But it's at least good that there are people who are defending our democracy, defending on it real time on the air. So I want to show you that because I think the reason why I wanted to show you this is not just because it's an explosive moment between two people, one who's living in reality and one who wants to create it, is that it really, I think, is instructive of how we talk about these things because he does all the talking points. He says, Democrats have objected to every single election and like all that sort of stuff. So let's walk through it. Let's see what he says and let's see how they get pushed back because I think it's a good way that we can push back people in our own communities who are parroting this sort of garbage. Here's what happened when he said that no president should ever say that they'll concede an election before they see the results of an election. Yes, he said this.
He would say he lost. Has he done it yet?
This is what I would say is no candidate from either party should actually say, I'm going to commit to accepting and not challenging election results ahead of time. Because every election we've ever worked in, there have been polls that didn't open, places that ran out of ballots, power outages. These things happen in every single election, which is why you have recount rules, you have recount laws to follow, and then the process works its way through.
But the process was followed, and 60 courts agree that there was no widespread voter fraud, and still we are hearing 2020 was stolen. We're still hearing that. Also, one thing that has not been mentioned are the fake electors. It's one thing to say it,
alternate
and
electors. Another
thing to say.
Because alternate electors, because let's remember the state of Hawaii in 1960.
One person has already pleaded guilty.
This is actually pretty shocking to me. I have never heard someone call the fake elector scheme the alternate elector scheme. And to that reporter's credit, she did point out that someone has already pled guilty for this crime. So it is a crime. But I just want you to see like what happens when they go down the logic and his reasoning of this and how it really doesn't work out. It's nice. It's kind of beautiful to watch.
In 1960, the state of Hawaii certified the election results for Richard M. Nixon. And sent on-time delegates from the Electoral College to Congress. They later had a recount and realized, oops, we were wrong. They sent an untimely alternate set of electors to the Congress, which then Vice President Richard M. Nixon accepted and gave those Electoral College votes to to John Kennedy.
So the state sent the alternate electors is what you're saying.
Correct.
Yes.
Right. That's
but
different
that's
than
not
what's
what happened
Still
here.
alternate electors. They were untimely by the letter of the law.
It does matter whether the state is sending them or
a
candidate is sending them.
That was so out there that even Ken Jennings was giving a stank face. Like, what? I had never heard that before about Hawaii. I just love that David Axelrod was just like, all right, well, that was a state sending their electors. And what Donald Trump and his acolytes did was they just sent fake electors that weren't from a state. So it's totally different and highly illegal. All right, in this next clip, I'm going to show you what happens when he tries to both sides January 6th. It's a sight to behold. And then after that, there's a clip where he says this thing that a lot of them always say, which is that Democrats have always challenged the election. But there's a beautiful response.
No, we're not going to both sides January 6th. We're not going to do it.
I know Democrats every day they wake up and thank God and relive January 6th like it's Groundhog Day.
So it wasn't a big deal?
I put it this way.
It wasn't a threat to our democracy?
There was more damage, more destruction, more deaths, and more police officers injured in the BLM riots. And nobody went to jail. We got bailed out by Kamala Harris.
You are absolutely out of your mind if you think Democrats wake up and say, thank God for January 6th. That was the most horrifying day I can recall. I wept that day because I have some reverence for this democracy. I have some reverence for that building, the Capitol, and when people overran the Capitol, and when I saw people threatening to kill the Vice President of the United States, to kill the Speaker of the House, it was unimaginable to me. And the fact that the President of the United States directed those folks to go there and
peacefully and patriotically. Make their voices heard.
Yes, he sat there for 3 hours while this went on. He sat there for 3 hours and sent an email condemning his vice president while they were erecting a gallows outside that. And he knew that was going on.
That's right. I wish January 6th never happened. I wish it never happened. I remember that day. I remember that day so well. I was in Georgia. I was on the Jon Ossoff campaign, and 3 hours prior, they had just called the election for Jon Ossoff, and then 3 hours later, the Capitol riot started happening. It was like the happiest day of my life for those 3 hours when we won. And then it was one of the worst days of my life when I saw it unfolding on TV, and I kept thinking to myself, why isn't anyone doing anything? Why isn't anyone doing anything? And then we learned afterwards that Donald Trump sat there and watched it unfold and did nothing. That person does not belong anywhere near the White House ever again. Here's one more clip where this man says that Democrats have always objected to the election. Let's just see how they handle it. I think it's pitch perfect.
The Democrats have objected to every election they have lost since 1988. 1988, 2000, 2004, 2016. So why don't we stop talking about the problem and actually trying to start solving the problem, which is literally increasing election integrity so no one has to question it.
First of all, let's just take a step back. Yes, Democrats in Congress have protested in the past, but Democratic candidates have conceded, every single one of them. Al Gore conceded. John Kerry conceded. Hillary Clinton conceded. We're talking about these candidates for president of the United States.
Then they all went around for years and called George W. Bush an illegitimate president for years, and Hillary Clinton called Donald Trump illegitimate for years.
The fact is, Democrats respect the process. The process allows for protests. The process allows for protests, and protests were lodged, but the process moved along. The candidate conceded promptly in those cases. That's how it should be. It shouldn't be a denigration of the system from the beginning, telling people in advance the system is corrupt, and if we lose, it will be because it was stolen. And that's what we saw in 2020. We're seeing the predicate for that again today. I mean, that's just the fact.
Did y'all write that down? I think y'all should just write that down, because that is such a huge talking point with MAGA Republicans. Democrats have always said that it was illegitimate, blah, 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 blah. And I wrote it down. I love what Dave Axelrod said. Dems have always conceded. We've always conceded the election. Democrats respect the process. By conceding, we respect the process. The process itself allows for protest. If there are people who want to object or protest the results of the election, like when we did when Donald Trump got elected, we got into the streets, or when people in Congress want to protest the results of the election, they're more within their right to do that. But Democrats have never stopped the process from moving along. The process always moved along, and the candidate quickly conceded. Wow, I just recapped that so well. But you should write it down, because that is a great talking point. I'm going to end it with this. Montel Williams is randomly in this panel. You haven't really seen him. Montel Williams, a talk show host, is in this panel, and he gets emotional talking about what his military service means for him. And I think this is what this whole election is what his military service is about, which is taking the oath to the Constitution, defending enemies of the Constitution, foreign and domestic. That's also what we're going to do in November.
You've got to remember, folks like me, and we probably got 40 million veterans alive. The majority of them put their hand up in the air and said, I do solemnly swear and affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Period. That's what we believe in. That's why I put a uniform on. To protect this for your generation, Let's start focusing on how we protect this and stop firing up those idiots who really think that they can Because at the end of the day, what do you want? You want to eat out of a garbage can? Because that's what's going to happen. If we go to a civil war, remember, more deaths in the American Civil War than any other conflict since.
Brother against brother.
We're going to do it again?
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?